What's going on, guys? Super Insane 18 here, and I am still sick and just rolled out of bed, but that's not going to stop me from bringing you guys content. So today we are talking about the top 5 meta decks of the July 2022 format. Alright, so this is actually also going to kind of double as a prediction video because this is also my top 5 predictions to win the upcoming North American Nationals that is happening in about a week and a half from the time of recording this video, so let's go ahead and jump on in. Coming in at number 5, we actually have Punk. Now, Punk is a deck that there are many different variants of. We've got the Punk Therion, the Punk Adventure Therion, and honestly, I think it is a very strong meta contender and a likely chance to win. The build that is up on the screen is the first place German Nationals build, which, I mean, obviously it's good. It took first place at one of the Nationals that's already occurred, and personally, I've played the deck once at a 50-man tournament, and having never played it before, I managed to take second, and it was a back-to-duel event, so it was a little bit more competitive than a regular locals because the prizing was better, and honestly the deck is just incredibly strong. Being able to just mill 9 cards on your first turn, which is very similar to something like That Grass Looks Greener, and being able to end on the Hot Red King Calamity that just tells your opponent they're not allowed to play their turn, pretty much an FTK, so I think that's really insane. And not to mention the Psychic End Punisher is the other boss monster for the deck, and that card is absolutely crazy, so definitely one of the top contenders for not only the meta, but also the upcoming North American Nationals. And coming in at number 4, we have Drytron. This deck has seen a crazy resurgence because of Ben 10 coming off of the limited list, going to semi-limited, and honestly, I didn't think that such a small change would make the deck as crazy as it is, but as you can see from the build on the screen, this is the winner of the UK Nationals, and it's honestly kind of crazy. The fact that this deck went from pretty much dead to just dominating the meta is really just insane in my opinion. I don't think I've ever personally seen a deck that does that just from them bringing a card from 1 to 2. So I really think that Drytron has a good chance. There's multiple different variants. There's obviously the one on the screen, but there's also the turn skip variant where you use the Morphactor Pain to skip the main phase and the Thunder of Ruler to skip the battle phase, essentially making your opponent's turn consist of just draw, stand, and end. So again, another pretty much pseudo FTK. Drytron is not only very consistent but very powerful and a definitely good meta choice for this format and the upcoming Nationals. Coming in at number 3, we have Floowandereeze. Now, this is my personal favorite deck of the current meta, and honestly, I wish I could be biased and put it higher up on the list, but it's my job to bring you guys honest content, so we have it at number 3. This deck is very consistent and very powerful. Not only is Empen just a skill drain on legs, but Barrier Statue tells your opponent they're not allowed to play their turn, and what would normally be the out to Barrier Statue, which is normal summoning something higher and running it over, isn't always possible either, because with cards like Dreaming Town and Ryza, not only can the Dreaming Town just put their normal summon face down, but you might not even need to go that far, because if you use the Ryza, you can just spin their normal summon back to the deck or their hand, and honestly, it just ends up being really crazy, because again, it's almost like a pseudo FTK. You're pretty much telling your opponent they're not allowed to play, meaning on the next turn you're going to be able to either get game for yourself or set up your board to an unwinnable position for your opponent. I think this deck is absolutely crazy. Dimensional Shifter is an insane hand trap, and this is the only deck that is really able to abuse that, so really good. Definitely a very strong meta contender. That's why I'm putting it at 3. Again, I wish it could be higher, but I gotta be honest with you guys, so that is going to be it for Floowandereeze. Definitely something you need to look out for and make sure you are prepared for with your side decks. And coming in with number 2, we have Branded Despia. Now, I really wish that I could put this lower on the list, which I will explain to you guys, but Branded Despia is a deck that has seen a lot of success since the Fallen of Albaz got its structure deck, and honestly, I think that the reason this deck is doing so well isn't because of the power of the deck, but because of the sheer number of representation. After those structure decks came out, pretty much everyone was playing this deck, and, you know, if you've got 1,000 people playing a deck at a 2,000-man tournament, that's over half of the pool, it's going to be bound to make its way up into the top. But I mean, just because of the sheer representation, I think this deck has the possibility to go a lot farther than it should, because obviously you're going to have good players playing it, and a good player can play a not so good deck and pilot that all the way up to the top. The build that you're seeing on screen is the Austrian Nationals winner, so I mean, it's already won one of the Nationals, so you can't really argue with results there, but I definitely think that this deck is overhyped and not as strong as people want it to be. I also rode that hype train when it first came out and I played this deck. I topped a couple of my locals with it, but ultimately I just don't really see the power. So I just want to bring you guys my honest answer as always. So that's going to be it for the branded Despia, but I do think that it is the second most likely to win the upcoming Nationals just based on pure representation. And before we get into our number one pick, I do just want to give some honorable mentions, and these are ones that have been doing really well at the national scene, but not quite to the top. The first one is going to be Marincess. With its new support, the deck is actually crazy. It's pretty much like a better Salamangreat. You have a plethora of one-card combos that get you into insane boards, either ending on the totally awesome for a negate with a spell trap negate, and a searched archetype-specific infinite impermanence that makes everything on your field unaffected, and you can also just draw some cards, and the deck's biggest strong suit is that you can play 15 to 20 hand traps, and that's just crazy. Your engine is so small and compact that you're allowed to play these cards that just tell your opponent they're not allowed to play while you're allowed to play, and because of that you can also play cards like Crossout Designator to prevent your opponent from stopping you, and honestly it's just really consistent and strong. And for our second honorary mention, we've got Eldritch. This is a deck that has seen some relative success, not only with just the pure trap version, but also with a branded version as well. I think this deck is one of those things that people think is dead and therefore don't really prepare for it. So because of that, it's able to come in and snipe some wins and is doing pretty well. It hasn't won, but it's definitely something to keep your eyes on, which is why it's in the honorable mentions. And our third and final honorable mention is going to have to be Dragon Link. Dragon Link is again one of those strategies that was pretty much almost dead, but has seen a relative resurgence. A lot of people are playing the Adventure Engine in it, but it's a very strong deck that can set up some very formidable boards, so it's something that you need to look out for because there's going to be obviously a handful of players that are playing it, and if you're not prepared, at the very least knowing how to play against the matchup, you're not going to have a good time when you see it. So just make sure that you keep an eye out for it. Even though it's not in the top 5 in my personal opinion, I still think it's something that you should prepare for. And coming in at number 1 is a deck that I just absolutely can't stand, not because it's too broken, but because I just don't think it's that big of an issue. If it weren't for you guys in my YouTube poll, I probably wouldn't even put it on this list, but I have to respect the fact that other people see it as a threat despite my own personal opinion, and that is why Sword Soul is going to be the number 1 deck. Sword Soul is just a relatively consistent synchro strategy that not only puts out negates, but also other interruptions in the form of popping your opponent's cards, such as Blackout, but not to mention that, they are also able to play 9 to 12 hand traps using Effect Veiler, Ash Blossom, Ghost Ogre, Infinite Impermanence, Nibiru, just a plethora of whatever that person's personal preference is, and honestly, I don't really see the appeal to it. Sword Soul is a deck that I love the art style on, but I can't get behind the playstyle. I personally don't think that it's that good, but you guys are going to roast me in the comments for that. Obviously, you guys think it's the best, so I had to put it here as the number 1 slot, and the build that you're seeing on the screen is a Nationals winner. If I remember correctly, this is the Dutch Nationals, so I mean, it's already won a couple of them. This is just the one that I wanted to show you guys, so you have to respect it, but this is definitely the deck to beat according to the community, so make sure you are prepared for Sword Soul. And that's going to be it, guys. This is the top 5 meta decks for the July 2022 National season. Make sure that you are prepared for all of these matchups, including the honorable mentions. Otherwise, if you intend on competing in a big name tournament or even just your locals, you're not going to have a good time unless you're prepared. So make sure you've got your sides ready for this. Make sure that you respect all of these decks and make sure that you are ready to go against them no matter what strategy you personally intend on playing. But that's going to be it. If you guys enjoyed, you know the deal. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, and share with your friends, and maybe consider supporting me on Patreon, because for just $1, you can support the channel in a way that I would never be able to tell you how much I fully appreciate. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.